California's Gold is produced in association with KCET Los Angeles and is seen statewide on California Public Television. This series is endorsed by the California Teachers Association, the California School Boards Association, and the California Library Association. Big Bear Lake is one of the best known and most beautiful lakes in all of Southern California. People come here to fish and swim and have all kinds of fun. But on this particular adventure, we're not headed for the lake. We're going to a valley located just a few miles north of Big Bear in the San Bernardino National Forest. A valley that's definitely off the beaten track and one of the most historic places in our state. In other words, a valley that's figuratively and literally very much a part of California's gold. Well, we have arrived, and a beautiful arrival point we have come to. Our guide today is Tom Core, who is the premier local historian here in Big Bear. And Tom, we've kind of built up a lot about this journey to get here. Now it's your responsibility to let us all know, where are we?
Well, we're in Holcomb Valley, and this is one of the most historic spots in the San Bernardino Mountains, believe me. This was the site where Bill Holcomb came down around that mountain in May of 1860, and he discovered gold in Caribou Creek, which is the creek over there, and created Southern California's largest gold rush in the next few months.
He discovered gold. Was he looking for gold? Did he stumble across gold?
Actually, he was hunting a bear when he first came into the valley, and he had wounded a bear, and he followed it down. And they came down and found gold in this creek, far more than they ever imagined. They had been working in Big Bear Lake, but there wasn't the gold that was there. This is where the gold was.
So what did he do? Run back and tell all of his friends? How did the word get out? Because there were a lot of people all over California looking for gold in 1860.
Oh, right. They'd been camped with the Joe Colwell party over in Big Bear Lake. And, of course, he went back and told them what they discovered, and they immediately moved over here. And that was on May 5th, 1860, that they established their camp here.
And that started an honest-to-goodness rush.
It really did. Shortly thereafter, after they'd mined some gold, and it was taken to Los Angeles to Childs and Hidden's store there, when they spilled this gold nuggets on the counter, believe me, eyes open, and the rush was on.
All right, now to give an example of what kind of rush we're talking about, if we had been standing right here back in 1861, what would we have seen right now, right where we're looking?
Well, we'd have been surrounded with log cabins and tents, and maybe some brush shelters, because these guys didn't have time to really build a lot of stuff. But quickly stores were erected, and there were some that were quite famous. One of them was the Octagon House, which was a bar and saloon and so on.
So there was a town here. There are no pictures. There are very few pictures made of this gold rush. We found one of it was a steam shovel of sorts.
That came along a little bit later, and that was very close here. It was a standard gauge railroad steam shovel that was brought up here to increase production.
And there was a sluice box. There's a picture of a sluice box where they were getting the gold out of the creek.
That's very true. The initial and easy way to get gold is to wash it with water. And sluice box is the ideal solution to that. It's just a trough with cleats in the bottom, and you run water through it, shovel gravel in it, and of course gold, being as heavy as it is held back by the cleats. and you clean that up at the end of the day, and you hope you're rich.
And there's a picture of a big old stamp mill that was located close by.
Right. We have a mill that was erected here shortly after the initial discovery, when they began to get into hard rock mining. And the ore from this came from the Mammoth Mine right over here. And this stamp mill was located right behind where we're standing.
Well, the town is gone, everything is gone, but something remains, and that something is right over here. Tell us what we're looking at here. This is an absolutely beautiful location for it to be in. What's the little cabin?
Well, the little cabin is representative of what the miners would have lived in the early days. And this was brought here by the Big Bear Valley Historical Society to show what the miners had to contend with.
So would this have been considered good living quarters? At least it wasn't a tent. It actually had a roof, and it was a log structure.
This would have been very good. Most of the miners probably didn't have anything this good until later on.
Now, I've seen pictures of families standing in front of their cabin, of their house. So there were women and children brought up here as well.
Oh, yes. There were families that came here right from the very beginning, many of them.
Was it tough living up here?
It was very tough. There wasn't any roads here. Everything had to come in by trails. So, you know, bringing a cook stove up here on the back of a mule was impossible. But that was one of the first things they did, was build a road up here.
Now, was this kind of a Wild West place up here then? It was kind of rough and ready, wasn't it?
It was really rough. It was so remote. As a matter of fact, this became kind of a hideout for criminals and crooks and so on, and became known in San Bernardino as the hellhole of the San Bernardino Mountains.
Oh my gosh. Well, there's nobody around today. It's pretty quiet. There's some beautiful scenery up here with the clouds and the trees and this beautiful valley and this cabin, which was brought here actually by the Historical Society, wasn't it?
That is correct. It was taken apart and brought over here in pieces and reassembled here.
To kind of give people who visit the San Bernardino National Forest a glimpse at what used to be here.
Well, that was the purpose of it, was to show the living conditions that the miners went through in the early days.
Well, not only do we have a cabin here to remind us of what used to be here, we also have some wonderful stories, lots of folklore, lots of I don't know what you would call them, but they've kind of been passed down from generation to generation of some of the wild and woolly stories that happened back here in Holcomb Valley. And that's what we're going to concentrate on for the rest of our tour. Tom is going to take us to some places and tell us some stories that are pretty wild and woolly, aren't they, Tom?
They are that. I hope they're true.
Okay, we are starting off our Tall Tales and Folklore tour, Tom, by this old stump. And this stump represents much more than just a tree. It was a very special tree.
Yes, indeed it was. As a matter of fact, this is called the hangman's tree.
Uh-oh.
And that's what it was. There was a large number of vandals and crooks and criminals and murderers that were hung on this tree. Some say as many as 40, but I take that with a grain of salt.
40 people hung from this tree.
There is pretty good evidence that 4 in one day were hung that were horse thieves.
Wow. So stealing somebody's horse was a big deal back then.
Oh, that was their transportation.
Only way in and out.
Right.
All right, now when the tree fell, do you think they saved this stump just because it was such a historic tree?
I imagine that was the reason. Nobody wanted to bother it. The Historical Society got some of the limbs of it, and we've saved those in the museum.
Some of the limbs they were hung off of. That's kind of morbid. But now there was also some stories you were telling us about wild things that went on in this town. Right within sight of this hangman's tree. One of them happened on July the 4th.
That is true. July 4th, 1861. They had quite a celebration here, and they didn't have a flag. So the blacksmith's wife made a flag from the miners' shirts, dance hall girls' skirts, and put it together, except she didn't know how many stars to put in it. And there was quite a little discussion about that. And there was a young man that had come here from New York, and he claimed there was 26. Well, there was a ornery gentleman here by the name of Blackbird Johnson, and he said that was the wrong number, and he wanted 24 on it. And there was quite an argument ensued. Blackbird shot him.
So he just shot him over the debate as to whether how many stars should be in the flag.
Right. And so that kind of got the day started. But a little bit later, they had a horse race, and Blackbird bet on one horse, and it was a close race. They came in neck and neck, but the judge said the other horse won. And there was an argument with the judge, and Blackbird shoots the judge. So the story goes.
So that's 2 in one day.
That's 2. Well, later that afternoon, they had a bull and bear fight. These were grizzly bears, huge bears. And they get ready to have this fight, and some joker had cut the horns off the bull. So, of course, when they got in the arena, there wasn't any contest at all.
The bear won.
Instantly, he broke the bull's neck. And you can imagine what happened next. The guy got shot.
By Blackbird.
By Blackbird.
So Blackbird shot 3 people on July the 4th.
On one day.
Killed them.
Killed them. And there was no...
He was never charged with...
There was no sheriff, there was no deputies, there was no nothing here. It was wild and woolly.
So he went free.
He went free for a while. A little later on, he was up in Deadwood, South Dakota, and there was a young man playing poker there that had long curly hair clear down to his shoulders. So Blackbird got to ribbing him about it, and this guy didn't like it, and he turned around and shot Blackbird, and this was Wild Bill Hickok.
So Blackbird finally got his comeuppance.
He sure did, in Deadwood.
He never hung from the hanging tree, but he got his up in Deadwood, South Dakota.
That is correct.
Okay, we've come about a mile or 2 from our first stop, and Tom, where are we right now? This is beautiful country right here.
Oh, it is beautiful. This is the Boy Scout camp of Holcomb Valley, and it is used all during the summer by a lot of Boy Scouts.
Lots of scouts here, but we're not here to visit with the scouts. We're here to hear an authentic story this time. After listening to some of those other stories you were telling me, I think it's time we hear one. You said this one's actually been verified.
Well, it has pretty much, and I think this is a true story. We're going to step back in time to 1861, and of course this was during the gold rush, and there was a lot of claims staked, and there was a Chinaman and a Greek decided on the same claim here, and they were arguing, and the other miners heard this and came around, and they said, well, why don't you guys have a fight and settle the matter that way? So they said, okay. They flipped a coin for the choice of weapons. The Chinaman won knives, so they went at each other with knives, and they thrashed around for a little bit and then fatally stabbed each other at the same instant. The miners, of course, were totally shocked at this turn of events, but anyway, they dug 2 graves right here.
Right here.
And right there, and then they marked the tree with the cross. So this has become a mountain legend.
So there's the cross right there that was carved into that tree in 1861, and to this day, this tree is known as...
The Tree of the Living Cross.
The Tree of the Living Cross.
It is a true legend. This was part of the Hitchcock Ranch, and the Scouts bought the Hitchcock Ranch, and they preserved the tree and marked it and kept it here.
What a wonderful piece of, even though it's a tragic story, it's a wonderful, real story, part of the gold rush here in Holcomb Valley.
Well, it kind of gives you a clue of what those days were like, I'll tell you.
Tom, you've been exploring this valley literally for decades. I bet there isn't a square inch of this place you haven't combed over and found things, bits of history that have largely been totally forgotten.
Well, that is true, Huell. I've been fortunate to have friends that have helped me, and we've gone out and looked the country over pretty thoroughly, I'll tell you.
Have you found a lot of neat stuff that's just been abandoned and overlooked and not on anybody's map?
Right, very unique things that are kind of special. And these things are just not seen by everybody.
Yeah, and you brought us to a place right now that I bet not 10 people know about. We're out in the middle of nowhere, and this is a piece of natural Holcomb Valley history.
This is true natural history, believe me.
Now, at first glance, it looks like a big old pile of rocks to me, but Tom and his buddies have done some exploring, and what have you found, Tom? Come on, let's take a look.
We've got a neat little passage here that is unique. I know of no other like this in the entire San Bernardino Mountains.
Look at this. It's a little passageway, just big enough to walk through. Now, is that totally natural?
Completely natural. It was how nature managed to put those boulders up there, I haven't the faintest idea.
Now, do you think the miners would have been through this thing? Look at this. These rocks have been here a long time, and they're just kind of perched up there, too.
They've been there for centuries, exactly.
So miners would have walked through here.
They've known about this, I'm sure.
And actually,
I'll bet more people in 1860 knew about it than do today.
Well, it's time to take a lunch break. And Tom, you said your wife has made us up a little bit of lunch here. What have we got?
Oh, we've got turkey sandwiches and grapes and some crackers and things.
Homemade turkey sandwiches.
Right.
Lots of bottled water. And we're standing here beside our vehicle. Do you ever call this thing anything?
Well, once in a while I call her Old Betsy.
What is Old Betsy? What's her breed here?
Well, she's just a darn good old F-150 Ford truck.
Boy, she has taken us to some great places so far today, and we've still got a lot more to see. Now, technically, we are still in the San Bernardino National Forest.
Oh, definitely.
We have left Holcomb Valley. We're just a little bit out of Holcomb Valley. We're going to head back down there in just a minute. But you brought us here to have lunch because this was the place that you have been telling us is the piece de resistance.
Well, this is a very special favorite place of mine, and the view from here is magnificent, and I love to bring people here and have lunch.
He has been building this thing up all morning. We didn't know what to expect, but never to be disappointed by Tom. Look where he has brought us for lunch. This is absolutely amazing. Tell us what we're looking at out here, Tom.
Well, this is basically the Lucerne Valley. The town of Lucerne is down there. Barstow is right over those hills. If it was a little bit clearer, we could see Mount Charleston over by Las Vegas, and over in this direction, you can see Mount Whitney.
Boy, this is just spectacular, looking down off the mountains onto the valley floor down there.
Yeah, we're looking at about 4,000 feet difference in elevation.
And you picked a perfect day to bring us up here. You were a little worried about it.
I was concerned about it. I thought it would be warm. We've had a streak of warm weather, but it's delightful today.
But look at this. We got the clouds. We've got the, what is this, a juniper tree over here?
Right.
We're going to be sitting right out here in our little lawn chairs here. You've got everything all set up for us. If we can't have a nice lunch here, I don't think
no place better you could go, I'll tell you.
This is absolutely spectacular. We're going to cut down the camera and enjoy our homemade turkey sandwiches, and then we're going to resume our tour, right?
Okay.
Well, this is great. What a great place to sit and have lunch. All the while listening to more of Tom's great stories and eating his wife's delicious turkey sandwiches. I was loving life. But little did I know what Tom had in store for us next. Oh, good grief, Tom. Where in the world are you taking us? How many people even come back on these roads or even know these roads exist?
Well, and not an awful lot of people know about this, or there'd be more people back here, I guess.
We need to mention that we're now officially in four-wheel drive.
That is correct. And you really should be in it on this kind of terrain.
Now, is this an original road from those early days?
It probably was. There's a lot of mining up here, and they certainly would have used this, but they'd have brought wagon teams up here, of course.
Good grief! I've never been on a road like this before. Where are you taking us? I'm almost afraid to ask.
Well, back here are the largest remaining ruins that are visible of the mining days when they were doing quartz mining, and there's a head frame up here and some shafts and so on to look at that are very, very interesting.
Oh, whoa! Most of this stuff has just disappeared, hasn't it?
Yes, it has. After all, it's been 140 years since all this excitement was going on.
When are we going to get there? How much more of this are we going to go through?
Oh, it's not too far. We'll be there pretty quick. Hang on, Huell.
Well, it was a rough trip, but it was worth it. We have hit pay dirt. Tom, this is truly exciting because this gives us our first look at an honest-to-goodness gold mine.
That is true. At one time in the history of this valley, there were dozens just like this. And today they're just few and far between. This is the largest remaining ruin that I know of.
And what's the name of it?
I wish I could tell you. I don't know.
So these just popped up. There were so many of them that they really are anonymous now in history as far as their names are concerned.
Well, that's true. I'm sure that with diligent work we could find the name of it, but many of them had no names posted or anything.
Now, what's the deal? There's the hole right down there. Is that where literally they would have gone into the side of the mountain looking for gold?
Well, that's part of it. As you see, there's an inclined shaft here, and this undoubtedly went down maybe 100 feet or so, and then there would have been tunnels take off from the bottom.
And how many men would have been working back in this little hole?
Well, it depended on how big the mine was. Like at the Lucky Baldwin mine, they had 150 men working.
Well, what about in one like this? Could there have been just 3 or 4 working on a claim?
There could have been. There was probably more than that here, though. As large as the operation is. You see all the tailings around here give us an idea of how large this mine was.
And you know what's so interesting? If this wood wasn't here to give it away, that little hole would just fall away. So there are probably hundreds of these mines all over these mountains.
That is exactly right. They're all over. You can find tunnels and shafts everywhere in the valley that even at this late date, a lot of them are just wide open.
And there's more.
Yes, from where we just were, Huell, this vein runs right through here, and this is a shaft that was sunk on an angle down to intersect it.
So there was a lot of mining going on just right here on this one. This would have been a vein they would have found.
Right. They maybe this is even part of the Mammoth vein that's on further over.
Now, how far down would that go?
Well, that varied. The Mammoth mine went down 200 feet with a very similar situation.
Wow. So was most of the mining done hard rock mining down in the ground, or was it done with the gold pans and sluice boxes in the creeks?
You're talking about 2 different types of mining here. Placer mining is where you wash the gold out of gravel. Quartz mining is where you dig down with a shaft or a tunnel and intersect a vein, and then you have to crush that rock to get the gold out of it.
And which was going on the most here in Holcomb Valley?
Well, in the early days, it was all placer mining. They washed it with water, and water was a big problem for them, and it restricted their operation. But in the later years, it turned into quartz mining.
So this mine would have been, this shaft would have been sunk In what period of time?
Well, it could have been sunk as early as 1900 and maybe came on a little later in time.
So wait a minute, how long was mining going on in this valley?
Well, it continued clear up into the 1950s. Old Marty Hepburn was actually operating the Harvey K mine as late as mid-50s.
So they were still finding gold here in the 1950s.
Well, they're still finding gold here. There's a lot of recreational mining going on here.
Wow.
There's groups come up here. I get a kick out of it. They come up here with $200,000 motor homes to mine 50 cents worth of gold.
Well, it's the search that's important, isn't it?
That's true. And it's the finding it. They get a flake, they're happy.
How much gold was taken out of Holcomb Valley over the years?
Well, we don't have any figures, but I have seen estimates in the $5 and $6 million figure.
Is that a lot of gold?
Not really compared to the mother lode, but it's a lot for Southern California.
But this still holds the record as...
This was the largest gold strike in Southern California.
The largest gold strike, gold rush.
Right.
That brought how many people here in 1860?
Well, let's say 1,500.
Wow.
A lot of people, and they were all over. They scattered all through this forest for miles around.
And what's interesting is that in today's world, it's basically, except for just a few little remnants, you'd never know that any of this took place here.
You could drive through Holcomb Valley and never know that there was a mine here if you didn't know where they were.
Well, it was here, and the remnants are still here, and there is still gold in them thar hills. This has been a wonderful adventure. Thank you so much for taking us, and I don't know whether I want to thank you for taking us on that bumpy road or not, but we've had a wonderful day here uncovering this little known and forgotten piece of California gold rush history. There was a gold rush here in Southern California.
Very true, very true.
Well, it took place back in 1860, not much left today, but the memories are still here. The history is still here. All of this took place a long time ago, and all of it is very much a part of California's gold. Well, hello everybody, I'm Huell Hauser, and I sure hope you enjoyed this adventure. If you'd like to see it again or share it with your family or friends, or perhaps donate a copy to your local school or library, it's available on video cassette and on DVD. All you have to do is call 1-800-266-5727, and we'll be glad to send it to you right away.